In this episode of Automower Answers, we answer the question, what if my Automower gets ran over? Well, here's one that we warned you about. If your Automower is crossing a driveway, it happens from time to time. People always say, what happens? Well, this is it. Right here you can see this baby got ran over by a vehicle. I'm not 100% sure what kind of vehicle, but a vehicle nonetheless. And you can see it did some damage to it, but honestly, for what this thing is, and being ran over by a full-size vehicle, the damage is not really nearly as bad as you would think it would be. We got a collision sensor there, banged up. The wheel is sitting kind of funny because underneath here, you got your wheel motor poking out of your lower chassis, which the lower chassis just, you can see it just split right out of there. So that's all broke apart and in need of some major repair. Now, normally when this happens, like I say, it's not as bad as you would think. As long as it didn't affect any of the circuit boards in there, when this wheel motor came flying through here, you know, when it hammered down across there, you can usually get away with just a few parts. Now, the few parts aren't always the cheapest, like that cover for the top of the Automower here with the big puncture wound in it. You know, this is a pretty pricey piece here. Lower chassis, you know, less than $100 for it. And if you're doing this yourself, repairing it all yourself, then it's, you know, it's not too bad to do. Definitely cheaper than buying a new one. Maybe if you're not the one that ran over it, if somebody else ran over it, you know, they pay for the repair, turn to their insurance, whatever has got to be done. But it's definitely rebuildable. It's definitely fixable. Not a big issue. You can see here this back plate on the wheel is sitting a little loose, but this really is pretty mild compared to what I've seen before. I mean, I've seen them hit so bad that the wheel motor was punctured through the bottom of the lower chassis. The one caster wheel was jammed up and it actually slid the rubber tire off of it and chewed up the one side of the caster wheel. So this isn't much at all here. We'll replace this lower chassis. We're going to replace that wheel motor just as a precaution because that took a lot of the hit right there. So no reason to tear this apart and not put a new wheel motor in it and then have a bearing problem pop up later on from all the load that was put on there. You can see this wheel here. That's all sitting funny on there. You got a gap on this side and a gap on that side. So there's a good chance that this wheel is twisted up here. Again, wheel's not a big deal. That is a normal wear item anyway. So, you know, if your tires are worn down in the back, just go ahead and replace it anyway. Don't try to salvage that and have the thing running all wonky because you're saving a few bucks just to reuse a wheel. It's going to be worn out in another season anyway. So, and then the joystick sensor, you know, they're not a big deal, especially if you've seen our other videos. That's real easy to do. They're not very expensive for the ones in the back. So we'll go ahead, get this baby fixed up here and back out and mowing. You can see here that this is what 25 years of robotics experience does for you. You end up designing one that even in the worst case scenario where it gets ran over by a car, the housing breaks and this wheel motor just went right down through there. It didn't go back into the motherboard, just down through the chassis. You know, pretty convenient there that it didn't take out anything else. It couldn't really get close enough to anything else. So really, really good way that they designed that. Keep that from tearing up anything more than just the wheel motor and the lower chassis there. But now they've got everything out of the way, you can see that this wheel over here on the side that wasn't ran over, this was pushed pretty hard. So we'll have to see if that's salvageable or not, or just go ahead and replace that one. And this one here, like we said before, that one here is same way. It's got its spots where it's bad. So once you split the two halves of the chassis apart, get a list of all the parts you're going to need. This is where you're probably going to have to start. 99% of the time, if you run over one of these, you're going to blow out that lower chassis or bust something off of it in some way, shape, or form. So you got to start by taking all the parts out of your old lower chassis that's busted and broken up and swapping them into the new one. And then do the same with the upper cover. This one here, at least the top part of it, and the headlights, ultrasonic sensors, the charging plates, the magnet holder, things like that, were still reusable. So it's really just this top cover that we have to replace on here. So that cuts down on repair costs a little bit. Reuse as much stuff as you can within reason. You don't want to be duct taping wheels back together and stuff like that. Get serious about this. But in a case like this here, top cover again, charging plates, they weren't affected by this, so they're definitely reusable. Be sure to check all your sensors. This one here, as you saw in the beginning, was cocked back, so we knew it was going to have to be replaced. But check all the other ones too. You get an impact like that, magnet could go shooting out or something, and you get the thing all back together and then realize that you have an error because one of the magnets or the little circuit boards got knocked out of the way, or just isn't making the right contact that it should. So just check over them real closely while you're swapping that stuff around. Save yourself some headaches later. So you saw the broken joystick sensor there that we had to replace, and this is our pile of parts that we had to replace on top of that. Both the back wheel covers were cracked. Of course, the lower chassis with the big hole in it. The wheel motor, we replaced it because obviously something drove up over it, and we're not going to trust that bearing lasting much longer. And then, of course, the cover there for the top of the Automower all smashed up. We have seen worse ones, like I said. We've seen ones where you had to replace the front caster wheels and stuff like that, or the wheel was just completely shattered and you had to replace the whole back wheel. This one right here, this was not really all that bad, despite how it looks. You're looking at roughly $500 in parts here for this. Yeah, that might sound like a lot, but think back a couple years ago. If you're familiar with the old John Deere 345 tractors, the GT 235s, the LT 160s, any of you ever had any of them? You ever hit something, or that hood comes flying off there, or you just go to open it the wrong way and you're out $600 for a hood? That's just a hood. This is a pretty extensive repair on this mower here, so it all depends on how you look at it. It sounds like a lot of money, but really it isn't that much for a repair of this extent. Now, keep in mind, when we say that was about $500 worth of parts there, that is you doing this on your own. You'll always have labor and stuff like that thrown in there if you take it to a repair shop. For the most part, this is a pretty easy repair to do. Take pictures of it before you take it apart if you're not familiar with what these machines are like inside. That way you have reference of how things go back together, and just take your time. Just like we told you in the high cut conversion kit video that we did, it's basically the same thing. And this is a perfect time for one of you guys, if you have a low cut, older version of a 430X or a 450X, something happens to it like this, it gets ran over and busted up. You're already going to be doing the majority of the work anyway. Rather than buying the stock parts, here's a good time to convert it over to a higher cut mower. If you did convert it to a high cut and you don't have the money to put back into it, if you saved your parts, you can always use those parts from the factory and just set it back down, save yourself some money. Either way, not a very hard job to do. A little time consuming just because you want to pay attention to everything you got going on there. But you can see ours is back together here. We're ready to put the top on it and get it back out in the yard. So you can see this one here is back up and running, good to go. If this is something that you have occur and you don't want to take the time to fix it, or you're afraid to get into it, check out the description for the video below. We always have information there of who you can contact, for parts, for service, things like that. We always try to give you some kind of information there to point you in the right direction for anything to do with these automowers. So, again, you can see, this thing's good as new now. So that's really all there is to it. Don't be worried if, you're afraid that if this thing breaks, that's it. It's going to cost you more to fix it than you paid for it, things like that. Really not that bad. You just saw the few piles of parts we had there. and really takes no time at all once you're used to working on them. Even if you're not, you're looking maybe 2 hours to do this repair like this. So there it is. I hope we answered that question for you about what happens if your Automower gets ran over by a car or something when it's out in the driveway, or somebody going down the road, whatever. It's not the end of the world. So as always, if you learned anything from this video or if you liked it, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Drop us some feedback in the comments section, and always keep checking back because we're always putting out new videos. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.